Hezbollah terrorists are trying to get their hands on weapon stockpiles they left behind in southern Lebanon when they ran away from the initial IDF ground incursion in October, while the IDF Chief of Staff visits southern Lebanon and declares that Israel is strictly observing the ceasefire. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu clarified that we are in a ceasefire, not the end of the war. Meanwhile, a Hezbollah agent embedded with the Syrian army was eliminated on the road leading to Damascus airport, while Hamas terrorists were eliminated in an airstrike in southern Samaria. Speaking of Syria, the rebellion against the Assad regime is getting momentum, with fighting reported on the outskirts of the city of Hama. This raises the question of who these rebel groups are and what they would like to do with Syria if they manage to take control of it. It also raises geostrategic questions such as why is Iran angry with Turkey and how is Russia stuck in the middle of all of this? What will it mean for Israel's ongoing security crisis and the ever-present threats from the Iranian-led axis of evil in the Middle East? TBN Israel's senior Middle East analyst Mati Shoshani will give us an overview of the subject. Finally, we'll take a look at the latest developments in the Gaza Strip as the IDF continues to destroy the Hamas terrorist organization. Progress has been made between Egypt and Hamas in negotiations for the release of the remaining Israeli hostages, and an Israeli delegation is expected to arrive in Cairo soon to continue discussions and demand that Hamas list the names of the living hostages. We've got a lot to talk about today, so let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what is happening in Israel on the 425th day of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, and all the Shiite militias in Syria and Iraq. All of them are operating under the auspices of Iran, the head of the axis of evil in the Middle East. A moment before we start, please look for the subscribe button and click on it if you haven't already, so that you'll never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. We start the news report with the significant developments unfolding on Israel's northern border. Just days after the ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah went into effect, tensions have escalated. On Tuesday, Hezbollah violated the ceasefire by launching rockets towards Israel. In response, the IDF took decisive action. IDF forces from the Alpine Unit conducted precise raids in the Mount Dov area, targeting and destroying Hezbollah's underground tunnels and infrastructure. Over the past week, engineering units have been working tirelessly to neutralize these tunnels, eliminating threats along the border. Also on Tuesday, an airstrike near Damascus eliminated Salman Nimer Juma, a senior Hezbollah operative serving as the organization's liaison within the Syrian army. The IDF confirmed that Juma played a key role in transferring weapons from Syria to Hezbollah in Lebanon, endangering civilians in both countries. The IDF statement read in part, "The Syrian regime supports Hezbollah and allows the organization to exploit it for the transfer of weapons to the Lebanese front, thus endangering the citizens of Syria and Lebanon." Juma was a significant and active figure in Syria, and his elimination constitutes a blow to Hezbollah's entrenchment in the region. Meanwhile, the IDF's Arabic-speaking spokesperson, Lieutenant Colonel Avichai Aderi, issued an appeal to the civilian population of Lebanon, using his social media channels to urge them to stay away from specific villages in southern Lebanon. He emphasized that any movement south of these villages is prohibited until further notice. Aderi is well known across the Arab world for his firm stance against terrorist organizations. His messages serve as a clear deterrent, conveying Israel's determination to defend its sovereignty. He recently said that when terror hides behind media and poisoned ink, it becomes even more lethal to humanity. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu held a special cabinet meeting in the northern city of Nahariya on Tuesday, declaring that while Israel is in a ceasefire with Hezbollah, the war is not over. Specifically, he said that Israel will not return to the situation of October 6. We will not tolerate sporadic or minor attacks on our territory and our citizens. Yesterday, there was a serious violation by Hezbollah, and in response, we struck over 20 targets across Lebanon. We are committed to the ceasefire, but we will not tolerate violations from the other side. Defense Minister Israel Katz visited the northern border area as well, issuing a clear warning: if the ceasefire collapses, Lebanon will no longer be exempt. We will hold the Lebanese state responsible for any aggression originating from its territory. He added, "We are strictly enforcing the ceasefire and will act against any infringement, no matter how minor." This is an apparent attempt to motivate the Lebanese National Army to carry out its obligations under the ceasefire agreement to prevent Hezbollah from operating south of the Litani River. But regardless of what the Lebanese National Army does or does not do, the IDF continues to collect intelligence information throughout Lebanon, ensuring that Hezbollah does not rebuild its capabilities. In particular, this includes monitoring attempts by Hezbollah operatives to retrieve weapons caches left since the ceasefire began. Switching our focus now to events in Judea and Samaria. Yesterday, in the Jordan Valley, the Israeli Air Force conducted a precision strike, eliminating 3 Hamas terrorists who were planning an immediate attack. Weapons were found at the scene, including 4 different firearms. Following the operation, IDF forces entered a hospital in Tubas to arrest additional suspects and retrieve the bodies of the terrorists. These actions underscore Israel's ongoing efforts to prevent terror activities and maintain stability in the region. Now, I have some good news for you about some of the ways that Israelis are reacting to all of this. After more than a year of war, you can see people volunteering all over Israel to help with the recovery process in many ways. It really gives you hope to see this godly war. But one problem yet to be solved is the shortage of nutritious food. It's hard to believe, but Israel is currently facing the worst food crisis in its modern history. The war has devastated the agricultural sector and disrupted the economy, resulting in shortages in supplies that have left many Israelis, including a large number of children, facing severe hunger. With your help, we can solve this problem as well. Leket is an Israeli non-profit organization working to ensure that these vulnerable groups are not forgotten. With the help of volunteers and supporters like you, they are ready to supply 2 million hot meals and 30,000 tons of produce annually. Contributions to Leket Israel this holiday season will go directly towards feeding those displaced by the war, supporting struggling families, and ensuring children receive the nutrition that they need. Join us in this critical mission. Donate today and help Leket Israel keep hope alive. Please visit www.mealsforisrael.org to make your donation and learn more about how you can contribute to their incredible work in the State of Israel. Thank you, and now back to the news. Developments just beyond our northern border are unfolding rapidly, and they could have significant implications for our region. In recent days, Syria has seen a dramatic escalation in fighting, with rebel forces launching a major offensive against the Assad regime. This followed immediately after the recent ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon, raising questions about Iran's role in these events. To help us understand what's happening and what it means for us, we're joined by TBN Senior Middle East Analyst Mati Shoshani. Mati, can you shed some light on the situation in Syria and what Iran's role is in these developments, especially in light of the ceasefire with Hezbollah?
Thank you, Yair. Indeed, the situation in Syria has taken a significant and unexpected turn. one that could reshape the regional landscape and impact Iran's strategic calculations for the foreseeable future. So what is happening on the ground? Over the past week, a coalition of Syrian rebel groups, led by an organization with a not easy name of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS for short, launched a large-scale offensive in the northern provinces of Aleppo and Idlib. This isn't just another skirmish, it's the largest rebel offensive since 2020. These rebels managed to break through the Syrian army's defenses and captured several neighborhoods in Aleppo, which is Syria's second largest city and a key economic hub. Now imagine that, after years of stalemate, the rebels are making significant gains against the Assad regime. So what does Assad do in response? This is where things get interesting. The Syrian government forces, backed by Russian air support, are scrambling to halt the rebels' advance. But despite heavy bombardments, these rebels continue to push forward. There are even reports that they've taken over the Scientific Studies and Research Center in Aleppo, which is of course code for a military research facility. This is a significant blow to the regime, both militarily and symbolically. And the humanitarian impact has of course been enormous. As always, it's the civilians who are caught in the middle. Thousands of people have been displaced. Estimates suggest that at least 14,000 have fled their homes in just a few days. Tragically, there have been numerous civilian casualties, including children, due to the intense fighting and airstrikes. And the region responds to what's been happening there. So how is this affecting the broader region? And where does Iran fit into all of this? Well, Iran has been a steadfast ally of the Assad regime since the beginning of the Syrian conflict. They've invested heavily, as they have around the Middle East, politically, financially, and militarily, to keep Assad in power. And so far, it's worked. For Iran, Syria isn't just another ally. It's a critical piece of their regional strategy. Syria serves as a land bridge connecting Iran to Lebanon, where Hezbollah, Iran's most powerful proxy, is based. This corridor allows Iran to supply Hezbollah with weapons and support, bolstering their influence on Israel's northern border. And of course, the ceasefire with Hezbollah is a huge effect on this region. This recent ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon has temporarily halted hostilities in that part. But it also means Hezbollah is regrouping and potentially less able to assist in Syria. Iran is likely reflecting on this, realizing that with Hezbollah occupied at home, the Assad regime is more vulnerable than ever. Iranian officials are viewing the timing of the rebel offensive with huge suspicion. Major General Mohammad Bagheri, Iran's chief of staff, stated that the simultaneous increase in rebel activity in Syria and the ceasefire in Lebanon is not a coincidence. He called it evidence of an American Zionist conspiracy aimed at undermining Iran's position in the region. From Iran's perspective, this could be part of a broader strategy by their adversaries to weaken their influence. Now, this is a very challenging situation for Iran. It puts Iran in a tough spot. They have to decide whether to commit more resources to support Assad at a time when their economy is already strained due to the international sanctions and pressure, and sending more troops or aid to Syria could further burden their economy and potentially stir domestic discontent. There's also the risk of international backlash if they escalate their involvement. Turkey is also playing a role in this entire event. Adding another layer to this complex situation is their involvement. President of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, has expressed intentions to create a safe zone along the Turkish-Syrian border. There are reports that Turkey is supporting the rebel groups in northern Syria, providing them with logistical assistance and possibly even weapons. Turkey's motivations include curbing Kurdish autonomy in the region and expanding its own influence, which is always their underlying goal. This puts Turkey at odds with Iran and the Assad regime, complicating regional dynamics even further. So what does all of this mean for the state of Israel? On the one hand, the weakening of the Assad regime and Iran's position in Syria could reduce the immediate threat along our northern border. Disrupting Iran's land corridor to Hezbollah could limit the transfer of advanced weaponry and of course the Iranian influence in the region, and enhance our nation's security. However, the rise of rebel groups like the HTS poses new challenges. HTS, despite its rebranding efforts, has deep roots in extremist ideology. Their increased strength near our border could present a different kind of threat. Moreover, increased instability in Syria can lead to unintended consequences, such as the proliferation of weapons or the rise of other extremist factions. Israel needs to carefully navigate this complex landscape. While a weakened Iran in Syria is beneficial, the potential for chaos and the emergence of new hostile actors requires great vigilance. It's a delicate balance, supporting outcomes that diminish Iranian influence without inadvertently empowering groups that could pose new threats to our country. So how might Iran respond? They have a few options. They can increase military support to the Assad regime. They could decide to double down, send more troops, equipment, and resources to bolster the Syrian army. But all of this comes with a risk, a rather very large risk for them: higher costs, potential casualties, and international condemnation on top of what already exists. Then the diplomatic efforts. Iran might seek to engage diplomatically with Turkey and Russia to stabilize the situation. They could attempt to negotiate terms that preserve their interests without further military escalation. Another option is that they could continue with proxy actions elsewhere in this region. Iraq can activate their proxy groups in the region to divert attention or apply pressure on their adversaries, as they've done in the past. This could include encouraging actions in Iraq or even attempting to stir unrest in other regions that they haven't touched yet. In summary, the developments in Syria present a significant challenge to Iran's regional strategy. They're forced to reassess their position at a time when their resources are stretched thin. For Israel, as always, these events offer both opportunities and risks. It's a moment that requires careful analysis and strategic foresight. We need to stay alert to changes on the ground and be prepared to respond to new threats, while also recognizing the potential benefits of a weakened Iranian presence in Syria. The situation is complex. What happens next will depend on the decisions made in Tehran, Damascus, Ankara, and Moscow. It's a reminder of how interconnected regional dynamics are and how developments in one area can have ripple effects across the Middle East.
Thank you, Mati, for that insightful and comprehensive analysis. It's clear that the situation in Syria is not just a local issue, but one with far-reaching implications for the entire region, including us here in Israel. We'll continue to monitor these developments very closely. We turn our focus to the Gaza Strip, where a severe humanitarian crisis is unfolding amidst a breakdown of public order and raising chaos. Over the past few weeks, Gaza has plunged into deep turmoil. Reports are coming in of looting, shortages of basic food supplies, and long lines outside bakeries. The civilian infrastructure is collapsing, and with Hamas losing control, armed gangs are taking over. Hunger is spreading. Bread, a basic staple, has become a luxury. Despite Israel sending hundreds of trucks loaded with humanitarian aid through the crossings, many of these supplies are being stolen by these gangs, which then sell these supplies at very high prices. For example, a single bag of flour, which normally costs very little, is now being sold for 400 shekels in the markets. Humanitarian workers warn that even the Israeli hostages who were kidnapped on October 7th and have now been held for over a year might be suffering from hunger because of the food shortage. The situation got even worse in the last few days as UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees, announced that it was suspending its operations in the Gaza Strip due to the widespread lawlessness highlighted by the looting of aid shipments and violence against UNRWA workers. An UNRWA official commented that the lack of governments has turned Gaza into the Wild West. While Hamas tries to show it is still in charge, there are reports of extreme measures being taken. Masked individuals believing to be associated with Hamas have been seen taking action against civilians accused of stealing flour. At the same time, some Hamas members are posting on social media pleading for help and pointing blame at Israel for the shortages. Amid this chaotic situation, there's begun to be talk of a possible political shift. A document from Qatar has been revealed proposing the creation of a professional committee for the management of the Gaza Strip. This would be a joint body of Hamas and Fatah under international supervision. This is a significant change for Hamas, which until now has refused any arrangement that would diminish its control over Gaza. The Qatari document aims to create a framework for political settlement, rebuilding Gaza, and possibly advancing a deal regarding the hostages. Sources in Egypt indicate there are signs of flexibility from Hamas, including a willingness to discuss the withdrawal of the IDF from the Gaza Strip and the issue of Palestinian prisoners. However, Israeli officials have cautioned that this might be a political maneuver meant to buy time, expressing doubts about whether these agreements will be implemented. But then again, sometimes things take an unexpected turn, and so we might be seeing a new regional dynamic emerging. Meanwhile, the United States is pushing for a speedy resolution to the conflict before President-elect Donald Trump takes office next month. Trump, known for his firm stance, has hinted that he might reduce humanitarian aid to Gaza, a move that could impact Hamas but also worsen the suffering of civilians. The tension between Hamas and Israel continues, but behind the scenes, intense talks are taking place in Egypt and Qatar. Will the crisis in Gaza lead to a historic settlement or further deterioration? Only time will tell. Here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on these developments moving forward. And once again, I invite you to click on the subscribe button so that you'll never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground and help us share the truth. You can also help us by clicking on the donate button on YouTube or going to our website at www.tbnisrael.com/give. I want to ask you to pray. Please pray for the safety of the IDF soldiers wherever they are, in the air, at sea, on land, in Lebanon, in the Gaza Strip, in Judea and Samaria. Pray for the safe return of the hostages from Gaza back to Israel to their families, that they may come home quickly. Pray for the residents of northern Israel, the northern Israeli communities who are beginning to return to their homes and trying to resume their daily lives. Pray for the peace of the people of Israel, and most importantly, unite in prayer for the peace of Jerusalem, and together we will win this war because God is on our side.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.